In December 2008, Toronto Life magazine published a cover story on Aqsa Parvez, a young Muslim girl who was killed in her home in Mississauga last winter. While featuring Aqsa's story is recognition of a young woman's life cut tragically short, the Toronto Life article perpetuates common stereotypes about Muslims and immigrant communities, diverting attention from the urgent issue of violence against women across Canada. On Tuesday, November 11th, an ad hoc group of violence against women advocates, anti-racism educators, young Muslim women, and women of color came together to hold a press conference speaking out against Toronto Life magazine's misrepresentation of Aqsa Parvez's murder. Speakers addressed issues of violence against women, racism, Islamophobia, as well as the media's powerful and delicate role in storytelling and cultural creation. The following video features key moments from the conference.
When I read Toronto Life's feature, Girl Interrupted, I was outraged. While I'm glad that Aqsa has not been forgotten, I'm dismayed by the way she's being remembered and how her death has been sensationalized to further an anti-immigration, Islamophobic, and racist rhetoric. This is irresponsible journalism and only polarizes the issues in our communities. This article feeds into fear-mongering, driven by an us versus them mentality, suggesting that embracing diversity is like a runaway train leading to the death of liberalism as we know it. Rogan makes the suggestion that Aqsa's murder is an indication that multiculturalism has gone too far, and this is simply offensive. It assumes that violence is linked to one's culture and religion, rather than the fact that an individual's criminal behavior is supported by a society that refuses to acknowledge the larger context of violence against women in our country.
I want to begin by mentioning that I try and avoid speaking about hijab publicly because I think it's over-tokenized and it's a discussion that comes up too often unnecessarily when we speak about Muslim women, and as Idil pointed out very eloquently, it's not the most important issue in many of our lives. That said, it's clearly, in my opinion, one of the most offensive parts of this article, and I think it really does need to be addressed. So, through the article, Aqsa's story was presented in a particular way, and I think the easiest way to summarize this is to quote the opening line of Mary Rogan's article, Girl Interrupted, and it reads, Aqsa Parvez had a choice, wear a hijab to please her devout family or take it off and be like her friends. She paid for her decision with her life.
Muslim women and women generally are tired of being discussed and debated, and in particular, what they wear. We are really, really tired of this debate. There is no debate. We have the right to choose what we wear, where we live, how we live. There is no one telling us what we must do or say or how we dress.
And in relation to the conference today, Islam is being blamed, honor killings is being blamed, but I've learned through working with Metrac that any violence against women, anytime a woman is killed or stabbed, murdered or violated, it is always an issue of honor killings, the honor of men and misogyny, which is a universal thing. And it excludes the fact that Canadian systemic factors play a role in violence against women and young women, school institutions, police institutions, government institutions, policies that are made, media outlets, all these things that are systemic perpetuate violence. They create stereotypes and that are extremely oppressive. And there's an issue when there are approaches made to prevent violence against women that, first of all, do not have an analysis or anti-oppressive perspective. When it comes to incidences of women being violated, we are always placing blame on the victim. Well, what was she wearing? Did she do something wrong? Is it because she didn't wear the hijab? Was she, a disgrace to her family? That just shows that we are re-victimizing the victims.
The conclusion of the article is kind of points towards how offensive the representation of Islam particularly, not only the issue of violence against women, but Islam specifically is. And the article concludes on the note that on a high degree of horror of the possibility that Aqsa may have feared that her father and her brother were right in terms of their violent demands that she wear hijab. And it sort of implies that anyone who grows up Muslim and who is taught that there are certain things that God wants or there are certain requirements that religion places upon you is automatically subject to violence. And what that assumes is that religion, and Islam particularly, is intrinsically violent. And as soon as there is an argument made by your family, by your mosque, or whatever, that this might be part of your religion, that every young girl is going to want to completely run away from that, and it's going to feel like a violent imposition on her body. And I think that we really need to trouble this, especially in a country where we say we have freedom of religion, where we say we have respect for Islam and for other cultural and religious diversity. I think this article really troubles that misconception and really kind of shows us the underlying racism and Islamophobia that organizes our thinking today.
The fact is that 51% of women in Canada have experienced at least one incidence of physical or sexual violence since the age of 16, and there have been approximately 25 female victims of domestic homicide each year in Ontario from 1975 to 2000. Bottom line, violence against women affects all women regardless of where you are from. I don't think that I need to remind you of the great power that you, the media, have in storytelling. You have the power to shape public thinking on an issue and influence public policy. To focus on cultural differences or trying to point to the imagined incendiary nature of what is a peaceful religion is to actually take away attention from the tragedy of the fact that a young woman was killed. What needs to be addressed is the crisis of gender violence in this country, and the kind of racist thinking that only serves to exacerbate the divisions in our communities. I would encourage Toronto Life to seriously examine its commitment to civic journalism in ways that support dialogue, providing opportunities for your journalists and editors to examine their racial bias, Islamophobia, and sexism would help to provide a thoughtful and balanced coverage that can feature the real Toronto. Thank you. Now we'll have